Conservation Advisory Council. This is the March, not 1st, but 5th? 6th? 6th, thank you, meeting. So Laura, could you call the order, please?
Sure. So online, I have Ellen Daviero, Georgia Murray Bonton, and Chuck Petrowski, with Clark Henry attending from my office. And in the room tonight, we have Richard Frontero, Vicky Michaela, Ashok Ramasubramanian, Simran Uturkar, and Chairman Dart Strayer.
Great. Okay, we have two packets of meetings, minutes to approve. First one is January 3rd, 2024. Did anybody have any corrections for that for those minutes? Hearing none, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
I will second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Let's go to the February 7th minutes. Again, did anybody have any corrections at all? Okay, again, I would make a motion to adopt the minutes as written. Okay, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Anybody abstained? I guess I should ask that question.
Yeah, I have to abstain from the January 3rd meeting because I was not present.
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, the minutes were approved.
Okay.
Okay, Laura, do we have anybody that wants to speak to us online?
We do not have anyone online and no emails.
No emails. Okay. Well, then what I suggest we do is move on to the environmental assessment forms. We have the EAF 2023-08. That's 2690 Balltown Road. And the applicant is looking to put an addition on an existing building. And they were before the committee last month. And we had some outstanding questions that we wanted answered. So I'd like to invite you up to go through the list, and after the attorney's gone through the list, we can ask any further questions. Okay.
Sure, thank you. Again, just for the record, my name's Charles Dumas. I'm an attorney. I'm with the firm of Lemry Greisler, and I represent GE Vernova, the applicant. I have with me this evening Peter Lilholt from CT Mail, who is the civil engineer, and Carl Platt from GE Vernova, who's the project manager. They can address questions that I can't. So I've sort of compiled a list of things that we've talked about. We were last here on February 7. We were twice to the planning board on the 12th and the 26th. At the 26th, there was a public hearing at the planning board, and they resolved to refer the matter to the ZBA because, of course, you know, we need a height variance to the building. And they also resolved to act on our site plan at the next meeting, Monday, the 11th, trusting that we will receive a favorable seeker recommendation from this board. That's why we're here this evening. And just wanted to tick through some of the things that I've sort of noted from various correspondence and from our last get-together. I guess the first thing I had was a request that the building have, excuse me, bird-safe glass. And we've addressed that to the architect, and he's assured us that there would be tinted glass, not clear glass, and that it would have appropriate opacity to prevent bird strikes. So there's that. The next item that I had was sort of bore on a couple of different things. It was a request about use of solar panels, but it was a little more far-reaching than that. It had to do with use of other energy-saving technologies, such as geothermal heating, cooling, that type of thing. I did address this in an email, I think it was the 22nd, back to Laura. A few things have come up. First off, the roof design that has been employed doesn't really support the solar panels on the roof. So there's that part of things. And since we were here last, we've been asked by the planning board to designate area around the building for banked parking. We've asked for a waiver for parking, and the planning board appears to be inclined to do that, but they wanted us contemporaneous with that to show where parking could be in the event of future need. We didn't want to increase the impervious surface, so this is our plan, and I recall that had some appeal to the group when we were last here. In terms of other energy initiatives other than solar panels, I guess the irony is that the technology that is being researched and developed in the building is some of the cutting edge green technology. And we're just not in a position at this point to, for operation of the building, utilize solar panels or other suggested technologies. The science that's being developed in the building hopefully will be some kind of self-mitigating part of the operation of the building. There was a concern about HVAC noise. The units that are going to be employed are standard, customary HVAC units. They're consistent with current product that's used in buildings of this nature. They're going to be ground mounted, not on the roof. And the way the topography is going to be structured, the building's kind of down a little bit. So the grading is going to create a berm-like area, which would be sound attenuation in and of itself. So we feel as though that has been adequately addressed. There were comments from the Tree Council, and I provided a late entry to both Laura and to your chairman. We did an inventory and submitted that to the planning board, and I assume it probably made it to this board by email. But we inventoried about 19 trees that are 10 inches or more in diameter. Most of these are in the area behind the building that will need to be cleared. The quality of the trees, it's not like we're talking about majestic oaks. Some of these are cottonwood trees, poplar trees. But understandably, the board probably has an interest, or the council has an interest in the replacement of some of those trees. And so we're open to discuss that as to what you feel would be appropriate. My sense is that in terms of the front of the building, that isn't necessarily the proper place for these trees, because the removal of the majority of these trees are going to be towards the back, the south of the building. So my sense is that we could probably do a one-to-one replacement and group them naturally in the back in an appropriate way that the landscape architect for CT Mail might designate. So that's our thought there. There was, I think, a question or a concern anecdotally about the function of existing stormwater facilities at the site. There was a thought that maybe during heavy storm action, there was a overflow and there was a malfunction of existing stormwater facilities. We were unable to find any evidence of that. And as far as we know, the stormwater systems on site are functioning properly. And of course, CT Mail can describe if you have questions about the function of the proposed system. So we're feeling pretty good about that situation. There was also, I think, a comment that the Complete Streets Committee had made about an old shed that was along the bike path. And I've confirmed that that shed is the town's shed and not GEV's shed. So if you want to demolish it, you can. If you want to improve it, have at it.
I thought that might be the case, but that was their one comment.
Right. Speaking of sheds, there was a question or concern expressed about view shed. And whether or not the proposed building, given the fact that we're looking for a 19-foot height variance, whether or not that would be visible from outside the property or from the bike path. We submitted a series of photographs with the email on the 22nd of February. I think that demonstrates, oh, here they are.
Yeah.
Very well. You can tick through them if you like, but these are from the bike path. And I think it's right here that the existing high bay, I think it's right there, the existing high bay of the learning center is just barely visible from the bike path. Again, I think, yeah, see right here, you can just barely see the top. And this is that, I think that offensive shed, right? But these are from the bike path. Yeah, see again, right there. Now, the interesting fact here is that the existing high bay is 64 feet, right? And just barely visible from the bike path. The proposed building is 54 feet, which is 10 feet less than that. So the idea that it would be visible from the bike path, I think logic dictates that it would not be. And I believe the proposed building is at least 2,000 feet from Balltown Road and over 3,000 feet to River Road, and accordingly just simply not visible from those distances. So we don't believe that there should be a concern about the view of the building.
And what would happen to the existing building?
The existing building is going to stay there. We're proposing a 27,640 square foot addition to an existing building.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
and, keep in mind, it was some time ago that, maybe a couple of years back, that the zoning board did grant a variance for a 64-foot building closer to River Road. That was never built. But, keeping in mind that there is some precedent for a height variance, we're going to be before the Zoning Board of Appeals on March 20th. It's our expectation that the planning board will be able to act on Monday contingent upon zoning board approval on the 20th. That's our trajectory, if you will. There was, I think, a question about the, and I think these were late entries. Vicki, this may have come from you. Method of carbon capture and how that process worked.
I did read direct air capture, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so I'm glad you did read about it. I'm a little bit constrained to talk about the science because it's proprietary. It's extremely competitive environment right now that GEV finds itself in. We are talking about a unique process that was developed right at the GRC. And it's a process that involves the use of sorbent material to capture. And the whole idea here of this DAC building will be to, on a larger scale, to try and scale this up from a 1x to maybe a 8 or 10x level, will be to emulate the various environmental conditions under which the capture would occur to determine the degree that can be captured and thus sequestered and put to reuse. Apart from that, I don't have much more science to talk about. There are a lot of patents involved with this, and as I say, it's a highly competitive environment. So there's a lot that is not disseminated. So if you've gone online and read, some of the press releases that have been put out there, hopefully that will give you a little further dimension to what I've just offered. Okay. We've talked about the building operation and use of renewables. There was a question about energy use of energy rebates and so forth. I think that might have been yours as well, Vicki. There's no government funding at all for this project. This is wholly out of GEV's pockets. It's a brand new company that's being spun off in a few weeks. They're taking a huge risk by committing to the investment in this building, in this process, in this place at this time. And as Ray Gillen, I think, pointed out at the planning board meeting at the public hearing, there has been no request for any incentives or government funding for the project. And I think the company's kind of proud that it's stepping forward to make investment in this place at this time.
Can I say something?
Sure, Vicki.
So I was referring to the tax rebates and incentives through NYSERDA, through New York State, and through the Inflation Reduction Act for renewable energy, and they exist, for solar energy as well as for geothermal. I'm not talking about government funding for the project. I'm talking about for the renewable energy.
Yeah, and I understand your question, and it's important to understand that this project is coming together in a very competitive space, and it's come together very quickly, and there just was not planning available for the process that has to go through for those kinds of rebates. Future development at the site may take that into account, but the funding right now is set. It's in place for the project that's contemplated without the need for those additional enhancements. I guess the last thing I wanted to talk about is the collaborative effort that we're trying to initiate and get going. When we were here in November, seems like ages ago, there were thoughts expressed, I think, Doctor, they were yours, about dialoguing about some of the conservation initiatives that the town is undertaking, natural resource inventory, taking a look at the area along the Mohawk and the bank there and other wildlife issues and other future plans that the companies, and I use that plural because it's now Aerospace and Vernova, right? Two different companies, but the plans that the companies may have in the future for use and occupancy of the property. And so I'm very pleased to say that later last week we had a conference call with a Teams call with both GEV and GEA personnel, and there's been a group designated to participate in discussions and share some of the vision for the properties. I've indicated that much to Laura in an email, and I've suggested that maybe a fairly lightweight group of 3 to 4 people from the town side be involved in those discussions. And I'd like to schedule, I've been asked to schedule something, after the spin that Vernova is going through, maybe later in the second quarter, where there could be a Teams meeting with an agenda and a launch for people to introduce one another and to begin discussing some of those initiatives and some of the plans that the companies have down the road for the properties. I can say that there's a great deal of enthusiasm on the part of the people that I spoke to about the dialogue. And so folks on the company's side are looking forward to that.
That's great to hear.
Thank you for making
And-
that dialogue happen?
I think it's important. We're talking about a campus now that includes two different companies that, have two different focuses for their business. It's property that's not fully built out. It's not fully used. It's also property that's bucolic in many ways. It's understood, I think, on the company's part that there are natural resources there that you care about that can be enhanced or improved. That's the purpose, I think, of the dialogue, to exchange thoughts and to, keep motion going on some of the things that are important to the town as well as to the companies.
That's wonderful. If I could say something at this point, this is Georgia.
Hello, Georgia.
Hello, Mr. Dumas again. I was the one actually mentioning the riverbanks and the wildlife in the area. And I'm so glad that the companies are embracing the dialogue because of the reasons you've just stated. And just to clarify, with respect to the bioretention area with the current project, I wasn't mentioning the construction of the stormwater drainage. I was trying to assess whether that biodiversity area could serve as a natural path corridor for the deers that will be attracted by some of the native plantings that you'll be putting in. So I think the dialogue can be a wonderful
Oh, no, thank you.
opportunity to expand that. If we can get the migration movement of some of the grazing animals along the biodiversity area to the river and then northward up the river, that might help control some of the migration of deer in particular through the town. So I just wanted to clarify those points there and say again that I think it's wonderful that the companies are embracing the dialogue and that Ashok have taken such a great lead in making that happen as well.
Oh, thank you.
And Mr. Dumas, I'll quickly add to that. I took the liberty of printing GE's sustainability report from the year 2022. And I say this without sarcasm. It's very well put together. It's a very nice report. And the report has a section on biodiversity, which is what Georgia was talking about, which is what we all are talking about. And I quote, GE understands the health.
I'm sorry, Ashok. I wasn't talking about biodiversity. I was talking about the wildlife migration along corridors. Biodiversity is, I think, more the inventory thing.
Thank you, Georgia. So I'm quoting from the document here from GE. GE understands the health and preservation of biodiversity are fundamental to ensuring a sustainable future for communities, nature, and businesses alike. This work will help our businesses identify opportunities to protect and enhance biodiversity. The document has some great examples of native species restoration, tree census and planting done in your Ohio campus and in your campus in Italy. And I hope I can speak for everyone here when I say that we are really hoping that we can have a similar thing in our Niskayuna campus with really working together with GE and the town to promote biodiversity, wildlife corridors, and native species and all that, and really taking advantage of your bucolic campus. And maybe in the 2024 or 2025 sustainability report, will be featured along with your Ohio campus and Italy campus.
And why not? Right.
I'd like to ask another question about energy efficiency. Has GE also committed, you committed to using high efficiency ventilation systems, lighting systems, insulation, things to make the building itself more energy efficient?
I can tell you that it's really state-of-the-art in terms of code compliance with the energy standards that are applicable in the New York State Building Code. I can tell you also that I think you're going to enjoy some of the discussion that will come out of the collaborative group that will come together. There's some kind of neat ideas that I think some of the young people over there that now are in different leadership positions would like to share. So I can just leave it at that. I don't have any specifics to offer to you this evening, but I would sort of kick that can to those discussions. I think you'll be pleased by what they have to offer.
I don't know that this has come up before, but Niskayuna actually adopted a higher energy code. It's called the New York State Stretch Code. So you guys want to, if it's state of the art, it might already meet the stretch code, but you might just want to go back to your architect and make sure he knows that the town of Niskayuna has the stretch code adopted. Which gets to your point, Vicky. Our town actually requires the majority of what you just said. Yeah.
We'll make sure the architect's aware of
Double
that.
check, yeah. It's not like too much more, but it's a little bit more. So have him make sure.
Understood.
Does anyone online have any questions that they'd like to ask?
So, yeah, this is Ellen DeViro, and I just had a couple of things. So, I thought that, well, first I thought it was a grant that GE received, and that was the emphasis for this project for the habits capture project. But if I'm incorrect, I apologize. But I just want to push back just a tiny bit more. So GE is one of the biggest companies in the world, and to be exploring carbon capture and not think to make the buildings, a little bit more efficient and work, in that modem. If GE doesn't do it, who's going to do it? I guess. So I understand, the timeline. I understand, everything. It's what everyone says all the time. So I understand it. And I'm well aware of the patents and the time sensitivity, but I just grateful that they're going to be reaching out and communicating more, and we'll have a thing. But I just want to say I'm a bit disappointed that that this was something that wasn't thought of prior to us thinking of it. So that's all. Other than that, I'm glad that all the plantings. I would definitely defer to the plantings, and since the group is unable to hold solar panels, more trees. You have plenty of land. We could put, a whole lot more trees on that land to try to do the same things that the maybe the solar panels would, which is to absorb some of that carbon. It's really all I have to say. So thank you.
Just to respond to your one point, there is no grant funding for the construction of this building or the operation of the science within it. The grant funding that I alluded to when I was here on the 7th had to do with the position that GE Vernova will take in assisting with other projects out of the area. I believe there's one in Illinois through the university there, as well as one in Colorado through the university there. And I believe GE Vernova will be taking a lead on a pilot project in Houston. And the grant funding, I think, that was provided by the Department of Energy was to enable that participation of the company. There's no government funding or grant funding relative to this particular building or operation.
There was something about the infrastructure bill funding the technology, the research in the packet that we received.
Yes, and that funding, as I say, is to assist the company in working on projects and taking the lead on projects, pilot projects out of the area, not for the construction of this building or the science within it.
So in other areas, in other parts of GE? I don't understand.
No, in other parts of the country where pilot projects are being conducted. Houston, I believe, Colorado, Illinois, and GE Vernova will be assisting in those projects to enable some of the science to advance and collectively and collaboratively with others.
I think if I can rephrase what you're saying, maybe you can say whether we're right or not. You are receiving no grants for the capital cost of the building itself.
That's correct.
So any grants you would use would be focused on the technology, not the infrastructure.
Right.
Okay, now I understand.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments online? I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to talk.
Mr. Dumas didn't touch on this, but I have it in front of me, so I just wanted to mention that previously, I think there was over 250 of a single perennial species proposed, and they have diversified it exponentially and are including a vast amount of additional native species with diverse bloom periods and flowering structures. And I just, because I obsessively love perennials, was reading through the notes and they look great. A couple of them that I'm very happy to see, butterfly weed and nodding onion. Those are awesome, super, super good for pollinators, and butterfly weed in particular supports the monarch. So I thank them for that.
I have one
Yeah,
more
go ahead.
point, Chairman. Regarding the use of pesticides, one of the things we spoke about in our previous meeting was the CAC generally asks new properties, new construction to go pesticide free. The town has a pesticide free initiative, and we have actually had conversations with GE regarding pesticide use on their campus, but specific to this property, with respect to the front of the building and all that, like, would you be willing to adopt strictly natural practices and sign up with the town's pesticide-free pledge?
I'm not involved in operations, but I can maybe call on Carl to answer that.
It might also be a great topic of discussion with
Yeah.
the
I think that's a bigger issue beyond this particular project.
Did you want to comment on it? Oh,
Well, there's also a note on page 32 of 168 in the packet on the right-hand side column regarding undesirable vegetation to be removed before seeding. Undesirable vegetation to be removed before seeding at the discretion of a licensed pesticide applicator. It's a little bit concerning to me to use copious amounts of pesticide to clear the vegetation.
I can only speak to my experience currently at the GRC Center. I have involvement with the grounds crew. We do all of our landscaping ourselves now, and I'm not aware of any use of pesticides. I have a lot of guys that pull weeds, but I'm not aware that we actually apply pesticides on the campus.
Regarding the construction of this new building, and again referring back to page 32 of the packet, do you have any feedback on the use of pesticides for clearing undesirable vegetation?
So I'm not familiar with the packet that you're referring to, but I believe my answer would be the same, right?
Well, it is.
As-
Like It has the logo of Gardco, Gardco, and it's on page 32. It's like a lot of small print, but it's on the right-hand side column.
Is that, that's a specification, it's a specification to the plan.
It's on the landscaping and lighting detail.
Yeah.
Good evening, Peter Lilholt from CT Mel Associates. This is our detail sheet. We can review that particular note and amend it. I assume that's just a standard note that we can simply revise.
Okay.
So that's not necessarily part of this project per se. It's just standard language that goes into typical specs.
It's apparently our standard notes,
Okay.
but I'd
Yeah.
be happy to review them for this particular project and discuss them with our landscape architect and see if we can remove reference to application of pesticides.
Yeah, and what caused my concern was the statement of removing undesirable vegetation. Like you will, as you pointed out in those photographs, there will be some vegetation that needs to be cleared for the purposes of construction. And I was like envisioning a large amount of pesticides being used as opposed to manual, like mechanical removal of undesirable vegetation.
No, that's not the intent, but I can understand your concern.
Okay.
Just so I have that correct, and so that's C507, and which is there a note number?
Yeah.
General notes 3 subsection A.
Okay. Yes, we can review that and amend it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else on the committee have any more questions or comments they would like to make?
I do have,
Yeah, go ahead.
I have one add-on comment concerning the plantings. And again, using the biodiversity area as kind of a highway, if possible, and some of the property as a highway for deer and other animals. If you add crab apples and juniper berries to your plantings and kind of use them to draw the grazers towards the river road, they will follow them and then migrate more easily northward. And that was just my only question. Do you think that you can add juniper and crab apple to your plantings for that specific purpose?
Good evening, Peter Lilholt again. Certainly, I can discuss that with our landscape architect, and I think she's enjoyed some of the commentary and discussion back and forth. So we'll take that into consideration, and I think that shouldn't be a problem.
Wonderful. It helps reduce the amount of deer ticks in people's backyards as well. Okay.
Thank you. Shook, did you have another comment you want to make? No? Georgia?
I
Nikki.
That's okay. So yeah, I just still don't feel really satisfied, I guess, with the answers that I've received regarding the greenhouse gas emissions. Making the building net zero. I certainly think I don't understand why, for example, solar panels could not be put on the roof, or whether ground mounted solar panels have been looked into. And I guess just in general, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. I don't know that much about carbon capture. I'm sure that the research, hopefully will bear fruit and try to get some of the carbon out of the environment, out of the atmosphere. But I really do feel strongly that it should not be a substitute for curbing our greenhouse gas emissions. And I often do hear that argument from proponents of carbon capture, that all we need to do is capture this carbon and then we don't need to do other things. And I think it would be wonderful if GE could set a great example to make this building net zero, especially considering the purpose of the research. So those are my feelings.
We're not at the point where we can alter the course that we're proposing.
What I would suggest we do, Vicky, because I think it is really important from a sustainability aspect, but I think perhaps the larger picture is to work with GE through this committee and not only go after a single building on that campus, but really work with the company to actually make the entire sites better. So yeah, I understand from an engineering standpoint that it would be very difficult to modify the existing building. But I do believe that if we develop a partnership with the company, that we can work with them longer term.
Yeah, and I mean, I hear we can't put the solar panels in now, but it's possible that we could figure out a way to put
Yeah.
solar panels in later. And I'm excited to hear the ideas that some of the people in the company have, because they may have thought of stuff that we haven't thrown out yet, and it may work really well. So I'm super excited about that.
And I don't want to speak for the companies in that regard but I do think that the dialogue will be useful, and I think that you'll be pleased by what you hear.
I'm not sure the flooding or the erosion on the bike path came from this committee, and it was a tree council. And when I saw that comment, I was trying to go through my mind along the bike path. And I think where that comes from is the western side of the bike path tends to be very wet at times. And there have been a few occasions where water has come across the bike path and perhaps brought some soil with it. I'm not entirely sure you would see it if you walk the bike path, but by where that the town shed is, or the town seating area, there have been a few times where there has been some washout there, and it strikes me as that there was some loose dirt somewhere in that area, and it was a torrential downpour, and it poured it across. I wouldn't think you would see big erosion for that. It may have happened a couple times over the last several years. I don't personally think it's a major problem, but if you do have somebody back there, it may just require ditching something somewhere to keep the water off the path. But it's not only specific to this site, it's actually, you find it also by the soccer field, where the road goes up by the soccer field as well. So it's a bigger issue, I think.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there are no other comments or questions by the committee, what I would suggest we do is go through the EAF form and go through the questions, Laura. Is that okay with the committee? Okay.
Yes, nothing like EAF fun and excitement. Let's get started.
Okay. So will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation?
That's yes, right? They are requesting a variance, right?
No, actually, the variances don't trigger that to be a yes.
It's R&D, it's zoned R&D, and we're doing.
Oh,
R&D.
okay.
Yeah, and actually, Clark reviewed the comprehensive plan on this. It is in the agenda statement, and the comprehensive plan is definitely pushing for, research and development, continued research and development of this land. So our interpretation from the planning department is it's consistent with land use.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
Go back to that. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land?
I think it's going to be fairly small. I mean, the parcel is fairly large. There's not a lot of traffic we anticipate with the addition of this building. So
Yes, yeah, I would concur with that.
And I believe they said in the previous meeting about 20 new employees total.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
I think that from my perspective, I don't want to speak for everybody on the committee. I think my biggest concern with this project was the visual impact in the area. And it seems from the information presented that it's fairly minimal. I know others on the committee have other concerns. So if you have a concern, speak now.
Yeah, I think we don't get to review projects that are so many thousand feet away from a road very often.
No.
So this doesn't have a lot of impact on existing residential homes. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? We really don't have those in Niskayuna, so I just generally mark that as a no. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructures for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Yeah, I think it was good to look at whether or not you'd be able to see it from the bike trail. And again, the Complete Streets was just wondering if GE owned that shed because it's old. But yeah, I thought we owned it. I wasn't sure. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy, or does it fail to incorporate reasonable, available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities?
It does. It doesn't take into consideration renewable at all. So, what do you think?
Well, I always support you guys pushing for renewable energy, but I think that question actually says reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities. And so I think when we answer that question, we answer it regularly asking for renewable, but not holding it against someone if they're unable to put renewable. I haven't seen us mark a yes to that for the sole reason that they weren't able to get solar panels or something like that on the roof. I do think we always ask. And I heard Ellen when she said if GE doesn't do it, who will? But I also really want to be sensitive to the fact that GE is taking a green technology and investing in Niskayuna to build it. And I think that that goes a long way. And then us being able to work with them in the future to add solar panels and other things in there is also very meaningful. And I think when he says cutting edge technology, that they'll review it to make sure, but they're probably far above the stretch code already. I think that they probably have. I haven't seen the architectural plans, but my guess is, from what we typically see with GE, that it'll be very energy efficient. I think maybe we don't have the architect here to really address the energy efficiency of this building, but it's not going to be a slouching building. It actually can't be in the town of Niskayuna because we have the stretch code, but I don't think that it's not reasonably incorporating energy efficiency. That's my opinion.
And Vicky, with full respect to your concerns, I will add something because we are going through a somewhat similar process at Union College and we are building a new building. And we talked about like geothermal and solar panels and all that. Sometimes the fact of the matter is like things like geothermal and solar panel and windmills, like they are eye catchy, right? Like they convey the impression of like good renewable energy, but in an actual building, totally unglamorous things like load optimization, right? Like who wants to talk about load optimization, right? And those things end up conserving energy a lot more than say a solar panel or geothermal. Like this is where we arrived at the college, looking at a lot of things.
Mm.
So I'm inclined to agree with Laura that like the building, given Niskayuna's stretch code, is already reasonably energy efficient. But I don't want to disrespect your concerns.
You know,
Yeah.
by 2026, buildings under 7 feet 7 stories will all have to be electrified. I mean, that's going to become law. That's in the budget. That's in Hochul's budget. So, I mean, this is coming. This is going to be the reality. It's not in effect yet.
But I mean, like, we don't have the architectural plans, but I see architectural plans come into our office like all day long. I can almost guarantee you that every single light fixture in that building will be LED. I just don't see that not be LED anymore. The cost benefit ratio is, it's surpassed. I don't even see them not. I would imagine the entire building's LED. The energy envelope is probably like maxed out. The HVAC is probably very efficient. That's just the way they come now, especially when you're doing a new building. It's harder to retrofit.
So what I understand that there's conflicting views on this, and I guess, Chuck, would you like to talk? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm also concerned. I've heard a lot of, maybes. It could possibly, we're not really sures. What is our process for determining the reasonably, the reasonable measures? Is it hearing from an architect? Is it determining, through a general review of the energy process or the energy use of a facility? We haven't heard anything, as far as I recall, about what's coming from GE and how they are taking those measures. And if that's one concern. Second concern, as I just heard, that, well, they'll have to incorporate our town stretch. Well, do they? And if they don't, then what happens? We know that sometimes in the town, people don't follow certain things and pay the minimal fee or whatever, or fine. So I'm concerned that we haven't answered this question. But I'm just curious to know more how we go about determining reasonableness at this point.
Yeah, let me speak to that a little bit because I've been on the committee for a very long time. Typically, the whole energy efficiency is gotten a lot bigger. It's much more in the spotlight now than it was in past. But I think this committee has reviewed projects in a way that our expectation is that they meet New York State and town code as far as what our requirements are. So in this particular case, it would be the stretch code. We have no indication that GE wouldn't follow the code at all. In fact, I've been involved with multiple projects with GE, particularly the chemistry building that they put in several years ago and some of the other modifications. And as far as I can tell, they've always lived up to, their word in following the codes and stuff like that. So I don't have any expectation of problems in that area. As far as energy efficiency and stuff, like I said, this is new ground for us in a way. And in some respects, we have not asked for energy audits in the past or have done that level of detail. What I would suggest is I think it's very important for us to look at that, but I think we as a committee in a town need to have that discussion first before we do that. Previously, we have made requests for geothermal. We've made requests for solar, and we've had some successes and we've had some failures. I can think of a couple projects recently where we asked for solar panels and we were told that the developer couldn't do that without naming the projects.
River's Ledge.
Okay, you did it. So, I think at this stage, it's been we've tried to push the development in that area, but we have not done detailed audits.
Yeah, and I had 2 points that I want to make, Chuck. I'm going to go backwards. So the stretch code is a building code, and it's a requirement when anybody actually within the town of Niskayuna submits a new building or a substantial addition to a new building. GE can't break ground without a building permit. They won't, and they can't get a building permit unless they meet the stretch code. So it's not a question. I know that we do sometimes have, especially with trees and things, conditions and subdivisions and certain kind of more gray area things that when it goes to get built, they don't do it right, and then it is very hard to follow up, and everybody gets frustrated. But the stretch code is actually extremely black and white, and the trigger there is they don't get a building permit, and I can tell you they will not start without a building permit. That's just a big company like that will have to have it, and in the very, very, very extremely rare condition that they don't have a building permit, they would get a stop work order and go to court. So that's an extremely easy enforcement action from the town, that they meet the stretch code, and they will do that. Once I have told them that, the architect will go check it and make sure that it meets the stretch code. And then just to follow up on what Mr. Strayer said, I think that this committee has been asking more and more about the renewable energy. But what I want to make sure is this committee is treating each applicant equally and fairly. And what I don't want to have happen is that I think that GE has actually shared more renewable information with us than any prior applicant. And I don't want there to be almost punishment for the additional information that they've shared. I think typically an applicant would come, like Rivers Ledge, or we had a building on Eastern Parkway, and we say, can you do renewable? And they do look at it. And sometimes they incorporate a little and sometimes they don't. And if the answer is no, we've said, okay, we're glad you looked at it. And so I think that we need, even if we're going to change it in the future, we should. But it's really important for this board to treat each applicant equally. And I think be respectful to all the additional information that GE has shared with us.
What I would suggest we do, Laura, is, Chuck, you bring a very important issue to the board. We need to have a discussion as a board on that. So we should make that an agenda item for a future meeting.
Mhm.
So at least we can have the board have the discussion and basically come to an agreement, or at least a consensus of what our expectations are as far as matters in this arena.
I think that's a great idea.
Is that acceptable, Chuck?
Yes, the shorthand I just heard is if they've complied, or potentially if they're complying with the stretch code, and that equals reasonableness. And if that's the algebra or the algorithm we're going to use, then that's fine. But yes, I agree. Thank you. I think this merits further discussion, and I do agree with Laura that we need to treat all applicants equally. And but also the other thing I've heard is that to trust GE, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other comments that we want to make on this particular item?
Well, can you go back to it? Can I see?
Oh, yes,
that
sorry.
item?
I just wanted to make sure you could see Chuck,
Oh,
when
sure.
he's talking. And we can certainly, and typically when we are filling this out, we know that we would like to see additional renewable energy.
So why don't I offer a compromise here and say, okay, they haven't incorporated everything that we've wanted. However, we would like to discuss this in our one-on-one meetings with the GE team in the future. Would that be acceptable to people on the committee? Vicki, would that?
Yeah, because I see this number 6 as having two parts. One is the energy conservation practices, and the other is renewable energy, and they're two different things.
Yeah.
So they could be doing, one part of it and not the other. So it's tricky.
Yeah, no.
In one question.
So what I would suggest, Laura, is we put some language in the form saying that this would be an item that we'll explore with GE in the future, and open up a dialogue.
Okay, this doesn't fit quite right, but
No,
I go back and I
but
listen to the
we'll get it
notes,
right.
and I'll make
there.
sure it's in the meeting and that I take it right from the minutes.
So one way to look at this would be that there is an issue here, but we're hopefully going to take action to mitigate it long-term. So we have done that in the past as well. So,
Thank you very much.
so Laura, generally when we mitigate something by an action, then we assume that mitigation is going to occur.
Yeah.
Right. So,
And of course, you know, my thing with seeker, but it's no to small and then
Yeah.
medium to large.
Yeah, right.
So I'll make sure that it's not, you know, a no that we're
Okay,
marking
yeah,
it.
just as long as we get that capture.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next.
Okay. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies or public-private wastewater treatment utilities?
Not a significant amount, from what
Yeah.
I remember.
I did, just to remind you, GE did meet with the water and sewer department because the sewer department wanted to check how much flow was going to go into our line. And they, based on the information that GE gave them, felt it was acceptable.
Okay.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
Yeah, and I think this goes to the viewscape, and I think from the viewscape we've seen, the aesthetics and the bike path, the impacts can be minimal. And I do think with the plantings and stuff, we have the chance to actually improve the site.
Okay. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna?
Please put, like Georgia's comments about the deer and the crabapple trees, and her comments about the wildlife corridors, and perhaps mine own comments about the pesticides.
No, I think my comments are more in line with improving the overall site. So the wildlife is already there. With the additional planting and the placement of the plantings, it will encourage their migration along the Laura, I don't think that goes there. I wasn't saying that it would result in a change to the natural resources. No.
Oh, I mean, I can take it out if you want, but typically we'd say no to small impact, and then our notes would be, you know, that we want the plans to protect the wildlife corridors. We're hoping to add crabapples and junipers. The applicant's going to look at the notes in the drawings to make sure that it's limited or no pesticides there in the drawings. Those are just typical, like, kind of filling out of the comments that we're making.
Yeah, the form is awkward
Very awkward.
in this stage, but when it gets actually printed out, it's much cleaner.
Is that okay?
A little bit, but the crabapples and junipers are part of the plantings, right? That will improve the site. So it's not like they're being mitigated or, they're not there. They need to be added as part of that site improvement.
Yeah.
That was, okay.
No, that's understood.
Laura, did the tree council have a list of trees? Because the applicant said 1-for-1 tree replacement for 10-inch diameter.
Yeah, so I think that ends up being 19, and I think they'd be completely fine with it not being at the front of the building.
Okay.
The tree council will review this one more time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
I'll put that in there. Replacement. Okay. Will the proposed action result in the increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
I would say no.
And then will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health?
No.
But can you put a note here on the positive that the proposed research has the potential to vastly improve human health, something along those lines?
And just to add to that, I think overall the project can let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think overall it's positive in general for the community.
Yes.
Yep.
Fully concur. And again, I mentioned this in our last meeting, like having spent a lot of time in India, like sucking pollutants out of the atmosphere. I'm personally very excited about it.
Okay, we've gone through the questionnaire. Is there a motion before the table?
I would like to propose a motion.
Go ahead.
I would like to say that this is a good project. GE has been very collaborative, and I'm especially psyched that we have the start of a long and productive, mutually beneficial dialogue. I have no hesitation in giving this project a negative declaration.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, do we need any further discussion? Okay, let's put it to vote. All those in favor of granting a negative deck motion, please voice your opinion by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, do we have anyone who opposes it?
I have to say that I do.
Okay, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. And do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion has passed. And we will pass this, our recommendation to the ZBA as well.
Goes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon.
Okay, let's move. Do we have any discussion items, Laura?
No.
No. Okay. Then let's switch the meeting over to the Climate Smart Communities Task Force. And the first two items that we want to sort of talk about is the natural resource inventory and the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and the climate action plan.
Okay, so the first, this is to follow up. I mean, actually, I don't think we need, sorry, I'm trying to get my computer to it. Here we go. Yeah, so Jim Nordgren gave the presentation to us at the last CIC meeting.
Laura, sorry to interrupt. My kids are unattended. They're not answering the
Oh,
phone. Can I please
go.
go and
Yes,
make a phone
absolutely.
call? You could do the greenhouse gas thingamy first, and then I'll come. We
Yeah,
can come back.
we'll
Sure,
switch it.
yeah, we'll
Yep.
switch it around, and if you need to go, just go. Sure.
Yeah. No.
We got you.
So let's do the greenhouse gas.
Yeah, okay. So the greenhouse gas emission, actually, I'm still in the same stage. I am currently working out the contract with the contractor that we selected, Climate Actions Associates.
Mhm.
And I was hoping that he'd be able to come to this meeting, but he wasn't. So I think he'll come to the next meeting. So I think at the next meeting, we'll have a presentation on the timeline for the climate greenhouse gas emissions and the government action plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. One of the things we're doing right now is that the town adopted energy benchmarking. So the town inputs its energy bills into a thing online called the EPA portfolio, and then we can track our energy use over time. And that, I guess, is very useful to Jim. We have a lot of Jims, for the record. I get confused. It's Jim Yeager for the climate greenhouse gas emissions, and it's Jim Nordgren for the. So if you don't know, just say Jim. But Jim said that will be very helpful for calculating greenhouse gas emissions. And so I'm currently working on that. I want to train one of my staff members to start inputting that energy. This is just an aside, but the town has recently, I think, kind of got has the potential to have a net zero wastewater treatment plant. And it's just recently started to accept enough waste that it's really starting to generate its own electricity. And so I'm really hoping to see that in the benchmarking, the energy use for our wastewater treatment plant go down. I'm really excited, and I hope that we see that. Haven't done it for the last year, so I'm hoping that we see that reduction. But anyway, we're going to do all that. In your packets, I think I showed this to you before, is in the RFP, but just to remind you guys the actions that we're actually going for with the greenhouse inventories and climate action plan. I included them. I included how we're implement in there. It says what you have to do and how to implement them. if anybody had a chance to read them. I heard the packets were difficult to download and they were like the very last pages. But if you have questions tonight, I can answer them. Or if you need to see them, you can let me know and I'll email them to you because it sounds like they might be hard to see. Okay, yeah. I think it'll be fun. And I think I like the presentation from Jim Nordgren. I think it'll be good. You guys are going to get excited when you meet with our contractor and he shows you what we're going to do.
Okay, natural resource inventory.
Okay, natural resources inventory. So as Laura mentioned, Jim gave a presentation to the town board last Tuesday. It was well received, and so work will start soon. So the next thing is to put together the working group, and I will start working on that pretty soon this week. You know. So who is Mr. Ormsby?
He's a biology teacher at Niskayuna High School. He's my AP bio teacher actually, so I know him pretty well.
So I'm
Yeah.
told if you want to get high school students involved, this is the person that
Yeah.
that I need to we need to speak with.
Also, Mr. Scott, because he's our earth science teacher. He's very much. He and Mr. Ormsby are very much they would be good teachers to talk to, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So regarding outreach to the high school, Simran, I'll work with you for one of the NRI people, me or somebody else, to actually come to the high school and stand in front of a classroom. Do you think that can be managed?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Okay.
if you coordinate with either of the teachers, they'd be happy about
Yeah,
you
right.
speak about
Okay.
that. Yeah.
I think it'll come better if it comes from it'll be better if it comes from a student.
Yeah.
So I'll send it to you and maybe you can forward.
Mhm.
Okay. The other outreach that I'd really like to, oh God, like,
Move it back. Try that.
okay. The other outreach that that I'd like to do is to the senior center. Does anyone have any suggestions on how to get some
Yeah,
people
we
involved?
can help you out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Typically I mean, Lori Peretti is the department head. Jean Fody is like the assistant. And then Linda, Robin, and Edie are all great. We just reached out to them for the comprehensive plan presentation at the senior center that went really well. So yeah, we've got good contacts there.
Okay, outstanding. And then, okay, this next part is probably the trickier part. Like, I need like a couple of people from this committee, yeah, you lot, and the online folks to do a little bit of the heavy lifting with me. I'll take the lead on this, but I need some people on this committee to kind of be helping me a little
So
bit.
what are we talking about? Like what type of tasks?
Well, the type of tasks would be to, like, once I will constitute the working group, but the funding agency requires like regular meetings of the working group, which is typically like once a month. So on the occasion that I'm not there to run the meeting, to run the meeting, and once we settle on the consultant walk dates to make sure a good crowd of people is gathered for the consultant walk dates, should be about 3 of them, that sort of thing. Make sure there are website updates. So those are 3 things that come to mind.
Well, oops, I can work on the website updates. I still have to do some for Ellen, so I'll try and do them all together.
All right. If he's pressing the button.
I can walk.
I am.
Okay.
I can't promise that I can get a lot of people out to walk on those 3 occasions, but I can try. We have a lot of walkers in my area and my neighbors. I can certainly ask.
Thank you so much, Georgia. That'll be a good help.
This is actually a really good outing. I went on the last NRI walks, and I tell you, it's very amazing because you take the former landfill, and from my perspective, it was aesthetically nice. There was grass there, but it was a landfill, and to walk through with a naturalist and have that naturalist point out all the different plants, identify birds, it changed my view of that site dramatically. I'd never realized it was so rich in biodiversity. So it is really educational. We walked several sites, and we even got to walk through a swamp. Of course, Shook missed that little hike, but it was fun. The group was really good, and it is it's a really good day, and I would imagine it would be the same way. Jim is very, very good at pointing things out, talking to you about the importance of the site. It's really time well invested.
I will certainly sell that point. The interactions, the sightings, the education. I don't think I can sell them on walking through swamps or,
Well, I don't think that was intentional, Georgia. I think we were walking a site and took a wrong turn. Not everybody made it through the swamp. Some people backtracked. So.
Some people are still in the swamp.
We're still there. Whoops.
But I'll tell you, it was a really interesting swamp going through it with the naturalist, because again, a swamp is much more than skunk cabbage and water.
That was down at Stanford Park, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was. Yeah.
And Laura, Mr. Dumas mentioned that we could have a meeting with stakeholders at GE very soon. I would love to get a GE person in the NRI working group. So
Yeah,
how
we'll
do
ask
we?
them.
I think
Yeah.
he said the second quarter. So
So
would be
when
the
he,
spring.
so they're splitting in March. So I think he's talking April, May at the
Yeah.
earliest.
So we will meet with them April, May. Is that the way of it?
I think so.
yeah,
Okay.
that was mine.
Yeah. I'm actually trying to get them to pick a date now so we have something on the books,
Uh,
even though it's like 2 months from now.
Yeah.
May I please attend that meeting?
Well, so we're only allowed to bring 3 to 4 people.
Okay.
So I have to just double check with everyone, but it
Okay.
makes sense to me. So we'll just make sure that I have consensus, because
Okay.
when we can only send 3 to 4 people to G, I'm not always the final chooser of the people that go.
Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, that's all I had from.
Okay.
So I know a couple of you joined recently, and I know we've talked about the NRI a lot, and it's missing on our website right now, which I will try and put up. But I did attach our old NRI. So when we did the inventory with that Dart's just talking about, to our packet, so that you can take a look and see. And one of the things that came about the presentation to the town board was the supervisor mentioned that a couple of the recommendations from the original phase 1 of the NRI are actually coming to fruition. Ashok and his wife worked really hard to get a trail up by the senior center, which I believe is opening or has been opened, and a couple other things they noted from Blatnick Park. So it's encouraging to look at the old one and see what has already happened within a year or 2 of adopting it, and then we can and then the very tail end of that is the new ones that we're going to take a look at. So So just if you have a moment, just page through it. It's pretty fun document.
I'll make sure to.
Okay. Why don't we move on to the initiatives? Climate smart goals and updates. Do we have anything to report on that?
I don't have anything for that
Okay.
today.
Do we have anything to update on the conservation easement program, or are we still in a holding pattern? Because
What are we waiting for on that one?
no, I think we're still in the holding pattern, because I think I'm
Okay, so like 3 meetings ago, I had made some summary document with help from Chelsea Ratner and one other person from the community. I'm so sorry, I cannot remember his name right now. I'm sure it'll come to me in like 5 minutes. And then Chairman Strayer, you mentioned that these are all good proposals, but you'd like it to be baked into the
Yes,
comprehensive,
yeah,
comprehensive.
I know I'm responsible
yeah.
for this, yes. I'll take full responsibility for
Well,
this.
it's not about like, I'm not blaming the chairman here. I'm just providing background.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do have kind of like modified versions of Bethlehem and other community proposals,
Well,
but we don't know.
let
like,
me make a suggestion
Mm.
here, and maybe we can leverage the efforts a little bit.
Mm.
There are other programs. Does this committee want to flush them out more?
Yeah. So, and my memory of it was that you may have even done a presentation to the town board.
No.
That's what
Oh.
I was fishing for.
I thought you did, where it went through because we need to get the school board, like because it impacts like a fair.
No,
amount.
yeah, I think Ashok wanted to do that, but we had met with the supervisor a while back. I mean, a year
You
or
and
so ago.
Ashok met with the supervisor. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ashok talked about this, and we had a conversation with the supervisor. And she made some suggestions and had some comments. And then we did talk about that there were other tools available. One of the things the comprehensive plan committee is doing is looking at holistically a whole bunch of different items. So I didn't know if what I was suggesting is maybe we have a discussion where this committee, if they wanted to, could take all those items that this that the comprehensive plan is looking at and come up with something that's comprehensive.
Like you mean
To go
present
forward.
the whole suite of options
Yeah,
for
and
conservation?
not wait for the comp plan to go out, if there was that concern. And we don't have to make a decision tonight. We can talk.
I
about
think that'd be okay. I think that would be okay.
To present to the town board?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what Dart's saying is that
Mm.
it'd be more than just the Bethlehem program. It would be a
It'd be
couple other
more.
things that we've been looking at,
Okay.
like the one report that you made for the comprehensive plan,
Yeah, we could do that. We can modify that up.
and just put those two things kind of together, and then present
Yeah,
options
I
to the
think
town board.
from my perspective overall, I think all these tools are really valuable and really important, but I think I think there's a whole toolbox that needs to be presented at once.
To encourage conservation and land preservation in the town.
And I think in that context, I think it would be very good for the town board to hear that.
Yeah, so maybe we should change the name of the item. Instead of being the Bethlehem Conservation Easement Program, it could be Conservation Easement and Land Preservation Tools, and then we
Yeah,
could, and then
or
we could,
even just land preservation tools. Because that would be,
put a whole suite of them
Yeah.
together.
Yep.
Good things about that is that people kind of like to choose from options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I also too, the town may have preferences, but also I think it's, like you said, developers or landowners may have preferences as well.
Yeah, so if you're kind of like, here's conservation easements, do this, set aside a fund so that if a property can come up for the market that is currently undeveloped, the town would be able to purchase it and protect it, all those types of things.
Transfer of development rights.
Transfer of development
Yep.
rights, yeah.
So,
I wanted to ask you a question. You had also mentioned at one point, I think it was through the Bethlehem easement program that they give the property owner a tax break. Is
Yes,
that part?
yeah.
that's part of
Yes,
that whole
Yep.
thing, right?
yes.
Yeah, that,
But with that one, he was saying that you have to coordinate it with the schools because it's a total tax reduction, right? And the fire districts.
Yeah.
So you have to look at all those things.
So, the at least the way the law is written in Bethlehem, the tax benefit applies to the land, not on structures on land. So it's actually not like humongous savings, right? So my house sits on like 3/4 of an acre or something like that. So I would get a tax benefit on only the land value of the 3/4 of an acre, not on the house, which is the bulk of it, right? it's more like hey, we recognize your effort, kind kind of thing.
Yeah. So in a typical situation like that,
Mm.
the house would be like $250,000 and the land would be like 50. You know, so
But
Yeah,
that may not,
like-
but that may not always be the case because
Right.
certain parcels have different
yes,
characteristics.
because some parcels will have a lot more land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just to fill in, the transfer of development rights is, you pay the landowner, to give up development rights, or another person within the town may need to, build something that is more intensive than what's currently, allowed by zoning, in which case the rights gets transferred over. And I think the big example of this is Grand Central Station. They wanted to build a building on top of Grand Central Station, but the development rights were sold for that. And that's how they preserved that space.
I see, interesting.
And so there's a lot of ways to work these things, and there's a lot of other tools too. Communities have done really great things throughout New York State to help preserve properties, and it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, so that's why it's great to have.
That's why I
lots-
think it's
lots-
great to have
few
a bunch of
examples,
them.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Chairman, if I may, can we set a goal to present options to this committee first by next meeting?
We could do that.
Okay.
I feel like that's pretty appropriate because as far
Yeah.
as I know, there isn't another big project right now
Yeah,
coming to the line. So we could really spend some time.
and
on-
we also have that stuff sort of put together already.
Yeah, like if we combine those two documents together and then think about how to
Yeah.
make a presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do that. That's fine.
Okay.
So we
So-
did make progress tonight.
Yeah, and it'll
Yes.
help with the comp plan
That's
too.
outstanding.
If
Yeah.
we put all that stuff together and then we present to the town board and get feedback, it
Yeah.
helps what we put into the comp plan.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I will start off with an email to you, Chairman, with what I have, and then we can do some back and forth, and then
Yeah, and then you
Try
can
to find-
attach your thing
Yeah.
part and then
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Mine is more notes. It's not ready for prime time, but we can get it ready for prime time. Just so you know the state. Actually, you may have it,
Okay.
probably, but
but it wouldn't
Think
hurt
through
to
it.
send it out again.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, pesticide outreach. Do we have anything to report there?
Not usually this time of the year.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead, Ellen.
So, a couple of things. So, one, not much on the pesticide, just, wanted to, just waiting for it to come on, all the information to come back online.
For the
Um,
website. Yeah.
Mhm.
To the compost, so, they have, picked they have picked the site at the senior center, and it will be there for Earth Day. And I guess I wasn't yeah. So it'll be there for Earth Day, and then hopefully someone will share a little bit more information. But I've sent out a couple of emails, so I'm just waiting to hear back. And unfortunately I'm driving, and it's very, very rainy and bad driving. So I wasn't able to get onto my phone. So for the GE, I would like to say at my vote. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to the thing. I don't know if that's possible. You can do that. Still gonna
Wait,
pass.
Laura,
so I
wait a second, Ellen. You either broke up or we didn't. Could you just repeat what you just said?
Yeah. I just wanted to know if it was possible for me to put in a nay for the GE project.
Oh,
Oh, what for the?
a nay.
A name. Okay.
She wants to vote against.
A nay.
Oh, you want to vote no? Yes, we can.
Yeah, we
adjust
can do that.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's very, the driving's not that great.
Okay,
So-
yeah, I'll adjust that. It does still pass. be a good thing because
Yeah.
it's hard to do a backward vote. But for the record, we can make sure that we have 2 nays. And I think
Sorry about that.
that's fair. Like, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I don't, that's fine.
Who was the other nay?
Vicky?
Okay.
All right. And then, yeah, I think that's all
Okay.
I have to say.
All right.
Okay.
Quiet Niskuna. Vicky, did you have anything you wanted to add about
I
that?
did have a conversation, quite a lengthy conversation with the woman who started Quiet Communities, the nationwide program. And that was, somewhat helpful, but she then put me in touch with other people that I could get more information from as to exactly how they've dealt with the charging and, the fact
Mhm.
that, the electric ones are not as powerful. And so I've reached out to several. It's been a bit frustrating because getting people to return my calls, but I'm happy that I at least spoke with her. I would like to speak to you at some point about the rebate or
The
there's some
clean
type-
energy communities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we can do that off,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
line or whatever. But I'm continuing to, try.
Okay, good. Excellent. I think at this point, information is probably the key thing that we need to get out to the community, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about
Yeah, I mean,
this equipment.
and we've been doing that and we'll continue to do
Yeah.
that for the homeowner, but it was more like if we want to try to encourage it amongst our town maintenance
Mhm.
department,
Mhm.
then we really need to get specifics about
Yeah.
how other towns have done it and how has it impacted
Mhm.
their ability to do their cleanups, their
Mhm.
yard cleanups, their property cleanups. So
Yeah,
I mean-
it's interesting because I heard a report, I think it was on NPR, about a school district in Alaska that has bought electric buses.
Mhm.
And, one of the concerns about electric vehicles is when it's really cold, they don't operate well. And, it was sort of something that they took on, not sure how it would work out, but they reported it was perfectly fine. And that shows me that there are examples where people have misconceptions about the performance of these products.
Yeah.
And some of them are maybe true, but some of them may no longer be true, or, they've solved those problems.
Yeah.
So-
And I think there needs to be sort of maybe a bit of a shift in our sense of the
Mhm.
aestheticism. Like, it sort of falls along the same category as, not putting pesticides because we don't need to have everything looking perfect, and not picking up necessarily every leaf, not blowing every leaf, mulching those leaves, having a sort of like a different mindset when it comes to
Yeah.
what looks okay
Mhm.
in the town.
I was gonna say the not working in the cold is way overblown. That's rare that they don't work in the cold.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd be like one story about one thing not working, and then it's kind of they don't work in the cold, and that's not really
Right.
true.
I think perhaps 20 years ago, that might have been more of a problem, but
Mhm.
these things persist. And that's the point I was trying to make. So
Yeah.
information. is-
Yeah.
I started a hybrid electric vehicle without the gas because it automatically starts on electric at -40 in Fairbanks.
There you go. Okay.
And I did not know if it was going to work because I'm not supposed to have the car that far north, but it was a rental car. And it started always electric, and it started every single time. And one morning it was -40 degrees.
Wow.
And it started
I've forgotten what that feels like.
-40. Dry.
I don't think I ever knew.
Vicky, I had, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I had a comment and a suggestion for the Quiet Niskayuna. The comment is, well, I wish you luck and I hope that you find success, because especially with a mild winter, it has already started. People blowing the leaves from the last fall. It's like, God, like it's March, so it's a, like, so, go ahead. Well, just I'll quickly finish my thought. It's like somewhat frustrating. Like, when did this become a notion that everybody's lawn needs to not have a single pine cone or a single leaf? Like, when did that become like a fact, right? The suggestion is that I have joined SCIAC, the Schenectady County Environmental Advisory thing, and like make a presentation to us, to SCIAC, right? Yeah, yeah, if you know who Porsche is, right? Yeah. So like people like one about reducing single-use plastics, where SCIAC recently passed a resolution to go to the county legislature, and then SCIAC passed a resolution dramatically reducing pesticide use on county-owned properties, including libraries. And the county ledge passed that. This is not a feel-good resolution; it's a binding resolution. So unless there is extenuating circumstances like invasive species and wasps and all that, there will be a dramatic reduction in pesticide use in all county-owned properties, including libraries. So, and the county owns a lot of properties. So if we are able to get to a point where like something like leaf blowing is curtailed or electric blowers are used in county-owned properties, then the county sets an example, right, for other businesses to follow.
Go ahead, Jack.
Oh, yeah. No, I just want to, Vicky, I want to support, every effort that you're doing on this. And I want to reiterate, this is secondarily about lawn maintenance. It's primarily about noise pollution. And that's, in my opinion, people can do what they want with their yards, or should be able to do what they want with their yards. It is the constant drone of motors. Yes, we know internal combustion is louder than electric, from 7:30 or possibly 7, sometimes 6:30. If you live by the golf course, it's at 5:30 in the morning through dusk, from spring to fall. And obviously in the wintertime, it's the snow blowers, getting people out of their homes. And I get it, people have to get to work, that's fair. But this is the problem. If we want to have a quiet community, a community where we want to be able to sit on our porches and enjoy the evening sunset or the morning sunrise or the afternoon sun, and we have nothing but the drone of motors, we are decreasing the quality of life in our community. And as well as there's the knock-on environmental impacts of using the internal combustion engine. So I just think this is a wonderful thing. I support it wholeheartedly, but I want to stay focused on the quiet communities, on the quiet part. And, obviously everything else we do looks at the conservation and the environmental impact, but noise is pollution.
Absolutely. And it's a health hazard too, because of the hearing impacts of the user. And that's why we called it Quiet Niskayuna, because hopefully everybody wants a quiet community, right? Can all get on board with that.
Yeah, and so that was what I was going to follow up to Ashok, because Vicky and I have talked about this, and I know Chairman Delarada, the chairman of our environmental or economic development, environmental conservation, and historic preservation committee is
You said it.
yeah, he is very supportive of this, and so we sort of have a two-prong attack. We did the education resolution where the town board adopted Quiet Niskayuna as an official initiative of the town. Then the next thing we kind of wanted to look at is there a way that we could get town facilities to migrate to electric? To set an example, I think the idea of maybe getting the county between one or the other, if we could get one of them to do it, then they'll all start doing it. So whether it's the county or the town, figuring out a way that they could adopt that technology will help it on a government scale. And then the other thing we talked about, which is still very preliminary, but there's other towns doing it, is the next step to a Quiet Niskayuna initiative is actually to figure out there are towns in Long Island and downstate that regulate the times that you can use lawnmowers, not lawnmowers, leaf blowers. It's something we really have to look into, but there are actual physical steps that we can take too, which we did discuss preliminarily, but we wanted to first to be like, here's the information, here's why, like try and get people to like buy into the idea so that we have a good broad base of support in order to try maybe a higher level of handling the noise pollution.
Yeah, and there are towns that have restricted it during the summer months, for example. You can do spring and fall, but not in the summer.
Right.
Of course, enforcement is also an issue, though.
I'm in
When you have a
enforcement department, so that's always for like, okay,
job.
here we go. It's much better if you get buy-in and people choose to do that. And by the way, my dad bought an electric snow blower, and they're great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe in a foot of snow, you might have to wait, but generally speaking, this winter, it's worked wonderful. And I think, and generally speaking, and they're so quiet. He actually puts it in his car, and drives it over to my house to do my driveway. And it doesn't even wake me up in the morning because I have a wonderful father. But electric snow blowers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well,
They're awesome.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Blower, then keep going.
We'll make sure that comment remains in the record. about your dad. Okay.
It doesn't leak gasoline. He can fit it in the back of his, and he does my whole driveway, and I have a huge driveway.
Let's move on. This was a good discussion. Composting initiative. Ellen, did you want to fill us in on any updates?
No, she actually did speak to that when she did all of hers. Her
Oh, did she?
update on composting was they picked the site. They're gonna have it open by
Okay,
Earth
never
Day,
mind.
and she'd like for it to be kind of announced. And
Yep.
I will work with her on the
Okay.
announcement. This doesn't pertain as much to you guys. The Tree Council was Arbor Day is coming up. Arbor Day is April 27th for
Mhm.
Tree Council, and we had a little problem with the email blast that we were working through for Arbor Day, and I believe that Erin Cassidy Dorian, she worked on it. I don't even know. It took a lot of hours, but she's got our email blast working again, so we should be able to start email blasting stuff.
Okay, Georgia, did you want to talk any more about the wildlife corridors?
Nope. I think I've said everything and no additional updates.
Okay.
We're here.
And if you guys want, I'll
So
add
this
in
is Ellen. Can I ask one other question? I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. All right. So I just this is in regard to the NRI. So do we have I'm happy to reach out to people and to participate, but the group that I spoke to, which was the Boy Scouts, they wanted a date. So I didn't know if we had if someone was gonna make a flyer with the date and that sort of thing, so that I could help. Yeah. I think that's it. I need the times and dates of when we think for the one that this is gonna happen. So in order to encourage people to attend.
We'll get the dates out yet, but Jim Nordgren sent me the contract today. So we still have to sign the contract. Ashok will put the committee together, and when we have some good dates, then we'll get them out to everybody to share with anybody they can think of. Although for the record, if we think that we're going to get like a whole bunch of people, we might want to like keep track of who's coming and spread them out across the different walks so that we don't have 100 people.
Okay, do we have any other business before the committee?
I was just going to say, so number 10, renewable energy expectations for next month.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Chuck. Can I put your name on that one? Okay, he's nodding. You guys can't see him. It was a really little nod, but I'm
Can
taking
you
it.
say a little bit more about that? Because I can't remember what
Oh, just
you
so
mentioned
that
it earlier, but
so that we can clearly define what our renewable energy expectations are for each applicant. I just want to make sure that we have it on the record.
going forward.
Yeah, so that
We
going
need to have the discussion as a
I
committee
see,
so
okay.
we can sort of come to a consensus of what our expectations are as a committee and then go forward with that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Sure.
and process-wise, it's really important to have that discussion on the
Yeah.
record before we apply it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other business before the committee? If not, I would make a motion to adjourn if I have a second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Okay, the meeting is closed.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you,
guys.
everybody.
Have a good night.